Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radha Soranitrai Goranitrai Goranitrai Jai Goranitrai Nitai Gora Sundara Nitai Gora Sundara Gora Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Jai Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Gurudev 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 Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Jayam Vishnu Papa Mamsa Pandita Asuta Sada Srimad is Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Papa Mamsa Pandita Asuta Sada Srimad is Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anand Gauri Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Iskan Founder Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Gaush Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Srila Gadara Srila Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopavina Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Turadham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Gangamaya Manamaya Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Vanchakalpatrudishcha Kripasanade Vichapatitanam Prabhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So we're reading from text 47 of the 7th canto, 7th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam. Karmanyarbhate dehi denatmana nuvartina karmabhistanute deham ubhayam tvavivekataha karmanyarbhate dehi dehenatmana nuvartina karmabhistanute deham ubhayam tvavivekataha Karman Yarbate Dehi Dehi Nat Mana Manu Vartina Karma Bistanute Deham Vayam Twa Vivekataha. Anyone would like to try?
Karmanyarabhate dehi dehinat manuvartina dharma bhistanute deham ubhayam vavivekataha.
Karman arbate dehi not manavartina karma bistanute deham ubayam te avakata.
Parmanyara bhate dehi dehe natma nivartina karma bhistanute deham ubhayam tvavivekataha.
Word for word. Karmani, material fruit of activities. Arabate begins. Dehi, a living entity who has accepted a particular type of body. Dehena, with that body. Atma anuvartina, which is received according to his desire and past activities. Karma by such material activities. Tanute, he expands. Deham, another body. Ubhayam, both of them. Tu, indeed. Avivekataha, due to ignorance. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The living entity who has received his present body because of his past fruit of activity may end the results of his actions in this life, but this does not mean that he is liberated from bondage to material bodies. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with that body, he creates another. Thus he transmigrates from one body to another through repeated birth and death because of his gross ignorance. Purport. The living entity's evolution through different types of bodies is conducted automatically by the laws of nature and bodies other than those of human beings. In other words, by the laws of nature, Prakite Kriyamanani, the living entity evolves from lower grades of life to the human form. Because of his developed consciousness, however, the human being must understand the constitutional position of the living entity and understand why he must accept the material body. This chance is given to him by nature. But if he nonetheless acts like an animal, what is the benefit of this human life? In this life, one must select the goal of life and act accordingly. Having received instructions from the spiritual master and the Shastra. One must be sufficiently intelligent. In the human form of life, one should not remain foolish and ignorant, but must inquire about his constitutional position. This is called Atato Brahma Jigyasa. The human psychology gives rise to many questions, which various philosophers have considered and answered with various types of philosophy based upon mental concoction. This is not the way of liberation. The Vedic instructions say, Tad Vigyanaratam Sagarum Eva Vigachet. To solve the problems of life, one must accept a spiritual master. Tasmad Gurum Prapajeta Jigyashu Shreya Uttamam. If one is actually serious in inquiring about the solution to material existence, one must approach a bona fide guru. Tadvidhi pranipratena pariprasnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 4:34. One must approach a bona fide spiritual master by surrendering himself, pranipatena, and rendering service. An intelligent person must inquire from the spiritual master about the goal of life. A bona fide spiritual master can answer all such questions because he has seen the real truth. Even in ordinary activities, we first consider gain and loss, and then we act. Similarly, an intelligent person must consider the entire process of material existence and then act intelligently, following the directions of the bona fide spiritual master. Om Gina Timina Mishya Gina Gina Shilakaya Shakshin Militamena Tasmat Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaramayam Vidati Swapadanti Kama. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Tirtha Swamini Tinamane. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shritapane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Tinamane. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachadis Chadane Vanchakalpatrigascha Kripasindabe Vachapatitanam Papabnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And verse one more time. The living entity who has received his present body because of his fruit of activity may end the results of his actions in this life. But this does not mean that he is liberated from bondage to material bodies. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with that body, he creates another. Thus, he migrates from one body to another through repeated birth and death because of his gross ignorance. So, Prahlad Maharaj is continuing with his preaching activities, his glorious preaching activities to his classmates while his teachers are away. While his teachers are away, he's giving them real knowledge. As at the end of the purport, it says, the spiritual master has seen the real truths. Prahlad Maharaj is giving the real knowledge to his classmates. And so here he's speaking about one of the core aspects of understanding material existence, that we are not these bodies, that this body, what the body actually experiences. And what Prabhupada says at the end of the purport, he says, an intelligent person must consider the entire process of material existence and then act intelligently. So the material bodies are made for functioning in this material world on the basis of karma. And so the jiva is bound by this cycle of samsara, taking body after body in material existence. And the soul is inhabiting that body, is really meant to be in the spiritual world, but the material body is not qualified to enter into the spiritual world. And these bodies actually can't even go to the heavenly planets or other planets, what to speak of Vaikuntha. So there's no way that we can stay attached to this body and actually enter into the spiritual world. If we stay attached to this body and all of its functions and all of its extended gratifications, then we will continue the cycle of samsara. But the soul is actually that's inhabiting the body is really meant to be in the spiritual world. But we must be in our spiritual body to access the spiritual world. And so to even begin that process, we must have the benedicting mercy of the spiritual master. And at Mangalarti, we sing Guru Lastakam prayers, and the very first line says, Samsara dava nalavira loka Trinaya karunya ganaganato Raptasha karunya gunanavasha Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. And we're saying that the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. And just as a cloud pours water, a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. So the spiritual master is extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. So we are in the shower, becoming cleansed, and the Guru is extinguishing that blazing fire of material existence. So out of the 8,400,000 different types of material bodies, we're so fortunate to actually have the escape body, one of the 400,000 human bodies. And we're even more unlimitedly fortunate to have contact with this process of bhakti, to awaken that dormant love that we naturally have for Krishna. And none of these millions of bodies are actually real life, but they're just combinations of matter to encase the soul uh, and give facility to facilitate the the fulfillment of the activities of previous lives, creating certain quality of consciousness, particular type of body based on one's previous activities in previous lives. And so we get a particular mother, we get a particular family, we get particular circumstances, and none of that is random. It's all arranged by the laws of nature, arranged by higher powers, and it's also based on our own activities. So Prabhupada says in the purport that if one acts like an animal, then he gets an animal body. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And also, if we act like a human, then we get a human body. Um, we have free will, so we want to get out of this confinement. It's like being in prison. Sometimes often we think that if we can just make this prison a little more comfortable, a little more nice, that if I hold a higher position within this prison, then I'm all right. But you're still confined. We're still confined in the prison. And there's still miseries and suffering. So it's actually the illusory energy that we think we can make adjustments to get some happiness here in this material world. Maya is bewildering and covering the consciousness. Prabhupada says in the purport, Prakrite Kriyamanani, which is Bhagavad Gita 3:27. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of the activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we can try to manipulate the material energy and feel like we have some control of our happiness and distress, but just rearranging the material energy that actually doesn't change the suffering that is experienced in the material world. Our attempts to counteract or to avoid suffering, we may feel or think that, okay, I've made this adjustment, and so therefore, everything is peaceful. But it doesn't counteract the distresses because they still come. And so does happiness. So, and it comes automatically. We don't even have to try to aspire for it. It said in Bhagavatam 1:5-18, Taishjaiva heto prayeteta kovido na labhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha ta labhyate dukavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time. Just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. That's Bhagavatam 1:5-18. So it's saying that we don't have to strive for happiness or avoiding distress because whatever we're going to get is actually already predetermined based on our previous lives. And that's why we have the body we have, the consciousness we have, and all of the circumstances that we have. And in that purport, it says, miseries and mixed happiness are two features of material life, and they are attained in Brahmaloka and other lokas also. So from the top to the bottom and everything in between, all places of material miseries. They are obtained in the life of the demigods and also in the life of dogs and hogs. The miseries and mixed happiness of all living beings are only of different degree and quality. But no one is free from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Similarly, everyone has his destined happiness also. And here's the main point. No one can get more of less, no one can get more or less of these things simply by personal endeavors. Even if they are obtained, they can be lost again. One should not therefore waste time with these flimsy things. One should only endeavor to go back to Godhead. That should be the mission of everyone's life. So we're conditioned. So it's um, difficult to stay in that type of consciousness that whatever I'm arranging, because we're involved in so many activities, arranging for this, arranging for that, and so on. And there's purposes behind those things. So it's difficult to actually stay in that focus that no matter what I do, no matter what happiness or distress comes, or whatever ways I'm trying to achieve happiness or avoid distress, that is coming on its own, whether I try to arrange for that or not. And so what's due will come without even separate endeavor to get or avoid. Is already predestined. So we want to always recognize that and try to live in that consciousness, which is difficult. It's like we've already made deposits in our karmic account uh, in previous lives. So whatever amounts of happiness and distress have already been deposited in that account. And so the only way to break that karmic cycle is the process of pure devotional service, which is given to us by the spiritual master, by the sastra. Um, so an example is given that you can't build a fire and then every once in a while keep throwing water on it because you'll put out the fire. So material desire and cultivating spiritual practice go ill together. It's like pulling on one end, going this direction, and then pulling on the other direction. You know, it's it's uh, it's it's not effective either way. So, and we struggle so hard for things that we actually can't even keep anyway. You know, we anything that we attain in this world, we can't keep it. And if we work so hard for something and then we achieve it and then we lose it, it's because and their suffering that comes from that is because we've invested so much attachment into uh, the effort of achieving it, and then when we lose it, we lose it. We lose it when we lose it, right? uh, but so everything is flickering in this material world. We don't own anything, and it's actually the material nature is actually rigged to frustrate us, um, which is to our benefit, to wake us up, Jiv Jago. If the material nature gave us bliss, then what would be the impetus to get out, of this material world? Um, Dukalayam Ashashvatam. Bhagavad Gita 8:15 says that this temporary world is a place, are just places of misery. And so, for example, good karma isn't really happiness. Often we think, okay, well, people can go through life and think that if I have a lot of money, then I can create a nice environment for myself, and then I'll be peaceful and happy. Uh, but uh, the stresses will still come because you've already had those deposits in your karmic account, and you will be withdrawing from those accounts at some point. you know, and it seems like it's coming randomly, but it was already predetermined. Um, and so often we mistake um, temporary relief from suffering as happiness. Um, and that is not real happiness. Just like if you have a toothache and it's so painful, it's just like constantly just like, ooh, pain, pain, pain. And then you take some painkiller, ibuprofen or something, and then the pain goes away. And then it's like, yeah, now I'm happy. But no, you really just relieve the pain. It's not really happiness, right? Um, So there's a difference between happiness and relief from pain. And there's so much suffering in this world that people are doing so many things to numb the pain with so many weapons of mass distraction. And we think we're happy, but it's really just the distraction from the suffering. Uh, just like people often take prescription drugs to cope with pain or illness, but there's often like accompanying side effects. So trading one illness for another pain is not relief. Um, Mantraspar says to Konteya, Sitoshna Sukadukada, Agama Payino Nityas, Tams Shava Bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception or sign of art, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. And so the challenge is that we are conditioned and habituated to the covering of Maya. And so we're in the process of reconditioning ourselves, reinstating our constitutional position. I like how Srila Prabhupada gives, such precise translations, to English to capture the meaning in the verses. Like Supreme Personality of Godhead. Conditioned is a good word to describe the jiva, the conditioned soul, or like in Bhagavad Gita 2:13, the embodied soul. That the soul is separated from the body; it's embodied, or self-realized. So when we think about self-realized, actually, that self-realization, uh, that means that it's not just theoretical; it's realized. So the depth of the attachment to the body is really shown when death stares us in the face, like, or in the eyes. And in those situations, are we or will we be situated in our constitutional position? Or will we be bewildered, thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. But if we think of it as the body is clothes, that's something we do every day. We change clothes. But when we change our clothes, are we afraid that our life is going to be extinguished? No, it's not even a thought. We just change our clothes and put on new clothes. But someone who doesn't identify with the clothes as himself, like Prahlad himself, then for Prahlad, the Lord's lotus feet is all he was absorbed in, and which is due to his previous absorption, his Shravanam. So he was naturally fixed in consciousness, and so so in his case, the proof was right there in the pudding. I mean, all the instances that his father tried to kill him, he was just so fixed in his meditation on his sweet Lord. So I was hearing class yesterday, and it was speaking about the Lord's lotus feet, taking the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. It's like a sanctuary, and in the sanctuary, there's complete protection and shelter. But in the case of Prahlad, that was really it's secondary and not really relevant to a pure devotee. It's because whether or not the body is protected or whether it's vanquished, whether it's protected or vanquished. It's secondary. It's immaterial, actually. It doesn't matter because the body is matter. And he understands that he's anti-material, the soul. And so the pure devotee is in such meditation, and that is the primary. What happens to the body is secondary because he recognizes and understands, realizes that he is not this body, that he realizes that he is the eternal servitor, Krishna. So I'm nowhere near that level of realization, but trying to describe it and continuing to stay in the shower of devotional service and pray and develop more faith. And so Prahlad was a perfect example of this. I mean, there's a verse in the fifth canto that describes what the consciousness of Prahlad, that this Brahma Sokyam is what will really satisfy the soul, which is what we're all hankering for. You know, we're naturally Satchitananda. You know, we're actually hankering for bliss. We're actually hankering for eternal happiness, which is so natural to the soul, but we're looking for that love in all the wrong places. You know, so therefore, uh, Prabhupada says in the purport that one would say atato brahma jigyasa. One has to come to that point of inquiring about one's constitutional position and his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Um, but going back to um, the fifth canto, where Lord Rishabhdev is saying to his sons that in that verse he says, Nayam dehu deha bhajam nriloke, kastan kamana harte vid pujam ye, tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam, sujyed yasmad brahma sokyam twantam. He's saying, my dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal, blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. And in that purport, Prabhupada says, human life is meant for tapasya, austerity, and penance. By tapasya, one can get out of the material clutches. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, devotional service, his happiness is guaranteed eternally. By taking to bhakti yoga, devotional service, one's existence is purified. The living entity is seeking happiness life after life, but he can make a solution to all his problems simply by practicing bhakti yoga. Then he immediately becomes eligible to return home, back to Godhead. So, so though I may have jaundice and I can't taste the sweetness, and maybe that's the same for you, I don't know. It's that same medicine. It's purifying the senses and purifying my existence to be reinstated from this state of avidya or ignorance to the full understanding of Tato Brahma Jigyasa, to be situated in my constitutional position. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada comes to the most important conclusion, that he gives three sastric references about approaching the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And one is well, I'll just give the last one. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshantite jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And so Prabhupada was saying here, and then at the end of the purport, that even in ordinary activities, we first consider gain and loss, and then we act. So with careful contemplation and using our intelligence to study the scriptures, to purify the intelligence, and to understand the process of material existence and the way out, then one can actually, through following the orders of the spiritual master, be able to have this fire of material existence extinguished, and we can go back to Godhead. So I'll stop there and read the verse again and see if we have any comments or questions or corrections or clarifications. The living entity who has received his present body because of his past fruit of activity may end the results of his actions in this life. But this does not mean that he is liberated from bondage to material bodies. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with that body, he creates another. Thus he transmigrates from one body to another through repeated birth and death because of his gross ignorance. Hare Krishna. Any questions anyone has? Or thoughts?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I want to thank you for a very nice class. Made a lot of very good points. I just have one very quick comment. Reminded by this verse that Srila Prabhupada used to tell us that at every moment we are creating our next body. That as long as we're not absorbed in devotional service, at every moment of our life, we are actually creating our next birth. Moment by moment, we are constructing our next body by our actions. So subsequent birth is inevitable unless we can absorb ourselves in devotional service. And even by one process of devotional service, just by hearing or by chanting, we can actually dissolve the accumulated karma that will result in that next birth. That's my comment. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And yes, it's like what you're saying helped me to remember about Jiv Jago. It's like we are in a dream state, you know, illusory dream state. And the spiritual master, the devotees are trying to wake us up to and I like this statement again about the conditioned soul, that we're so conditioned, you know, and there's so many uh, ways that we're conditioned. And so it definitely takes, like Prabhupada says, you know, always just chant Hare Krishna 24 hours. And in that way, you know, we're constantly purifying because we're staying in contact with Krishna. And so, which is difficult, you know, because we have to perform so many activities and our attention is placed on so many things throughout the day, or to speak of distracted by so many things throughout the day. So the more that we can actually, when we actually do spend concentrated time to fully absorb the consciousness in hearing and chanting, which will help our remembering Krishna when we are putting our attention in other places. Any other comments or questions? Devaki Priti.
Thank you so much, Dad, for your class. So many good points. And I remembered a few things from Bhakti Maharaj, like when you were talking at the beginning of your class, when you spoke about how we have an escape body by having human birth. And I was thinking about, I don't remember which book it is, but one of his books, he talks about, I was reading it recently, The Perfect Escape, and he's like talking about how we can use that, like he goes into depth about how we want to get out of this body, and he talks about like how when you're a prisoner, how you need to escape. So I was reminded of that when you made that point about the escape body. And then also when you talked about how none of these bodies are real life, they just encase the soul. It reminded me of his beggar meditation about the dead man walking from die before dying, about how like we think that we're actually living, but you know, if we're just doing things based on our body, then we're not. He pretty much talks about that. We're actually just a dead man walking. And then the last thing was when you were talking about how we always were trying to make this prison a little more comfortable, and then we think, okay, good, like yeah, I got things like more situated. And that reminded me of one of his beggar meditations, which I don't remember the exact meditation title, but pretty much it's like saying how a comfortable prisoner doesn't want to be liberated. So I was just feeling so happy. You know, you're such a wonderful example of your spiritual master. And through what you were saying, I was remembering your spiritual master, and I was feeling so happy and grateful that in this lifetime, you get to be my father and I get to learn from you. So thank you so much. Just wanted to share a few reflections.
Thank you, Devaki Priti. I'm learning from you constantly. So thank you. Yeah. Every time you speak, you give a mini class. It's like condensed. Thank you. Um, there's something I was going to share with you said, but oh yeah, I think somebody can help me remember. You might know, David. But doesn't Dave Rita March have a book called The Perfect Escape or something like that? It's something like that. I can't remember. Or does anybody remember? Well, maybe not. Maybe my memory fails me. Any other comments? We're just about 8 o'clock. Well, it's a little after 8 now. What's it look like, Pajaris? We good to go?
Yes. If you want, I can do closing room on the first continuation. You need to do greetings.
Okay, so we'll end here. It's time for greeting. Thank you so much for attending, and hopefully I didn't put you to sleep. All I did was try to repeat Srila Prabhupada's words as much as possible. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.